First of all, I'm Filipino-Australian. I work most of the time in Singapore. As was said before, I'm openly HIV positive, so HIV is an issue that's dear to my heart. I am running a social enterprise right now, but my roots come from advocacy. And I'm eager to share lessons on how we've used technology, social media, to promote LGBT inclusion. But I think it's important for me, at the beginning, to be clear about what data I'm able to share. So first of all, it's community-based. It hasn't been peer-reviewed, but we've definitely gotten some validation from the market. And also, when we define inclusion, we are defining inclusion as a situation where access to businesses and services is enabled in our case, for underserved communities who are seeking places that are safe, accessible, and welcoming. Okay? So I want to go back to the problem, or what brought me into this space of working with technology and inclusion. Back in 2012, I asked myself the question, and I had seen this topic come up repeatedly in every HIV conference, which was, how do we get key populations to an HIV testing site or a treatment hub when stigma and discrimination get in the way? And with that problem in mind, I spent 7 years experimenting with a number of different interventions that you could see the timeline on the screen there. So that's creating education portals, setting up multilingual online counseling services, creating content marketing solutions, crowdsourcing campaigns. All of these things with the idea of, do any of these interventions result in getting people to an HIV test, to social support, to legal assistance? And unfortunately, at the end of it, none of them did it to scale. We had some minor success, but none of it did it to scale, and it resulted in many, many different pivots. And at the end of this journey, at the later stages of the journey, when we were conducting an evaluation, some of we were very fortunate to do a randomized sampling to get access to people. And what they had told us were two things that have since kept me up at night, every night. And the first one was that we appreciate all of your information and awareness building about what HIV is, what human rights are, what to do if we face discrimination. But you know what? You're just reminding me of my problems. And the second one was, why don't you give me something that I can use every day? Because I'm not thinking about HIV, I'm not thinking about health every day. I need something that helps me find out where I can hang out with my friends, find out where I can spend time, find out how I can advance my career. And the audience that we were speaking to was not just MSM. It was lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender youth across 5 sites in Southeast Asia. And so we took that insight and we went back into the field, and this is what we found. We found that minorities in Southeast Asia spend 2 hours a month searching for places that are safe, accessible, and welcoming. One wheelchair user told me that when she has to go to a place that she's unfamiliar with, she must make numerous phone calls, check across the internet, ask friends and family, all to find out the quality of that place's entrances and restrooms. And I had my own situation when I was fired because of my HIV status and then threatened with deportation. And it took me 2 days to find social support. And so what I have discerned from these findings are 2 things. So number 1, people are having difficulty discerning which places are the right fit for their needs, and also the supply of places that are serving underserved communities is very limited. And so by our estimates, this affects a large proportion of the population. So our solution is this. It's called Be Inclusive. With Be Inclusive, app users can find wheelchair-accessible places, restaurants, community centers, they can find hotels, you name it, in a matter of minutes with more confidence, right? But it's not just wheelchair users that we are serving. We are committed to serving groups most vulnerable to discrimination, and particularly groups that are seeking places that are welcoming and have the amenities and services that serve their individual need. We know that transgender people feel more welcome at nightclubs and other nightlife establishments when there are gender-neutral toilets that they have at their disposal. We know that gay men feel more comfortable at clinics when there are doctors and nurses who are non-judgmental. We know that single mothers who are in the search for housing feel more welcome with real estate agents who provide better services for mothers who are going through divorce. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we learned over the last 7 years. So I want to share with you some strategies for success in trying to deliver these types of interventions. And these principles might be helpful as you conceptualize your campaign. So first of all, when you're deciding on an intervention, rather than thinking about just the public health imperative, think about it from the user's perspective. How is your intervention or product adding to a person's life? And so an example in our situation was that based on our research, we found that people have great difficulty finding places that have the amenities and services that they're looking for. So currently, mass market apps like Yelp, like Google Maps, all try to use disability symbols or freedom flags or other types of symbols to indicate that that place is inclusive. But unfortunately, those symbols are not specific enough to be helpful to minorities. There are single market apps that are dedicated to serving to minorities, like LGBT directories, like directories that help breastfeeding mothers find out places where they can nurse their child. But unfortunately, these apps tend to keep these minorities into silos. So what we're trying to do with Be Inclusive is to create a one-stop shop where diverse communities can find all of the inclusivity information that they need at their fingertips. The second thing that we're trying to do, because just showing people where to go is only a Band-Aid solution. The real problem that brought me to this was the problem of stigma and discrimination. So I believe that the way to address stigma and discrimination is to grow the supply of inclusive places. So the way that we're trying to do this is to create incentives for businesses and service providers to be more inclusive. So it's not just the ones that we all know of today, but how do we get more people involved? And the way that we believe that we can do that is to create a much more attractive commercial market. So that means bringing diverse groups together. So it's not just transgender people, it's not just MSM. For us, it's LGBT, it's people with disabilities, it's diverse women, and by bringing them together, we can generate a much more attractive commercial imperative for businesses and service providers to take notice. We've also found through research by other organizations like the Liam Foundation in Singapore, was that there are many people who are interested and want to be inclusive, but they just don't know how. So by working in partnership with women's organizations, disabilities groups, and LGBT groups, we can provide the training and the tools to help businesses and service providers be more inclusive. And that's our way that we want to drive growth in inclusive places. And finally, the last point I want to make is the urgency to act now. We have a golden opportunity with the rise of the millennial generation. Arguably, the human civilization's biggest generation is coming to the fore. And this generation demands, at least based on the market research, demands that businesses, service providers, and governments act with more ethics and more transparency. And so in our work, and I would encourage in your work, you work in partnership with millennial generation to really bring about that change. And the way that we're implementing it in our work is that our platform is designed as a feedback loop. It's designed so that users can have directly engage with businesses and service providers and give feedback that will help that service provider improve and hopefully resolve any incidents where redress is required. These are the results of our pilot that we've conducted in Singapore over the last 9 months. Our app is still in advanced prototype stage. You can download it if you are an iPhone user. But what these results mean that in November last year, we started with a baseline of 20 inclusive businesses and services in Singapore. And now that's grown to over 1,000. And our goal over the next 6 months is to convert 80% of that 1,000 in our database to places that have been audited for their inclusion and try to take that forward. And we'll do the auditing with groups like AWARE, like SG Enable, a disabilities group, as well as LGBT groups as well. You'll see down the bottom our statistics on our monthly active users of our app. It's quite modest, I will admit, but we know that we can make that a much more healthier number once we have an Android version of the app. I want to give a shout out to my team and also our partners over the years. They've been instrumental in helping us, keep going despite the obstacles. And just in closing, just reinforcing those key takeaways. Think of how your interventions can add value and really create a positive change in a person's life. Let's work together to try and grow the supply of inclusive places rather than just being satisfied with the ghetto that we're having to deal with right now. And finally, now is the time to act. We've got a golden opportunity. Inclusion is a hot topic, and let's try and make it more meaningful and do so with accuracy, with precision, but also do so with a lot of love. Thank you very much.